July 6, 2001. Tracy Bradley was the mother of 4 girls. On the day in question, the 2 elder girls were spending time with their grandmother, so only the 2 younger girls were home. 3-year-old Diamond and 10-year-old Tianda were left home alone in their apartment on the south side of Chicago because Tracy had to go to work. She was picked up by her boyfriend George, and before they left, she instructed her daughters not to leave the apartment while she was gone. She also told them not to open the door for anyone. Between 8 and 9 a.m., Tracy called home 3 times, but nobody picked up. Phone records showed that several other calls from different numbers had been made to the apartment that morning, and 2 of these calls resulted in hang-ups while the others went unanswered. Tracy returned to the apartment at 11:30 a.m. to find it completely empty. Her daughters were nowhere to be seen. She frantically searched the apartment, but the only clue as to where the 2 girls had gone was a note saying that they had gone to the store and then the school playground. Tracy reported Diamond and Tianda missing just before 7 p.m. that night. Hundreds of volunteers, including Chicago police officers, friends and family, and even the FBI, conducted a search of the surrounding area. It was the largest missing person search in Chicago's history. The police received over 800 tips, but none of them led anywhere. During the investigation, it was discovered that Tianda had left a voicemail on her mother's cell phone that Tracy had not found until after she realized the girls were missing. In the message, which was sent at 8:30 a.m., Tianda said that George was at the front door. She was asking for permission to let him in. However, it's unclear who George was. Tracy's boyfriend was named George, but one of their neighbors who happened to be a part-time babysitter for the girls was also named George. Tianda never specified who she meant. The note that Tianda had left for Tracy was closely examined by the authorities, and there appeared to be some inconsistencies. Tracy confirmed that the note was in Tianda's handwriting, but the grammar was just too perfect. Remember, Tianda was only 10 years old at the time, so the perfect grammar was extremely suspicious. Tracy believed Tianda had been coerced into writing the letter by a third party. Additionally, Tianda had always called her mother to let her know she was going out in the past, so leaving a note in the first place was also suspicious. Unfortunately, no public record of the note exists, so I don't know the exact wording. Due to the mysterious usage of the name George, the police investigated both Georges that the family were involved with. As it turns out, receipts from July 7th showed that Tracy's boyfriend had purchased 42 large trash bags and 2 pairs of gloves. The authorities searched his home and found that 5 bags were missing from the roll. One of the pairs of gloves, which were gardening gloves, were also missing. Furthermore, one of his neighbors told the police that they saw George burning something in a 55-gallon drum and then loading it into his car afterwards. When questioned about the burning, George denied that it ever happened, but the police found evidence of charring on the rafters of his garage. The authorities also found a blanket in the trunk of George's car that had several strands of Tianda's hair stuck to it. He claimed that he had taken the girls to a drive-in movie theater shortly before their disappearance, and he had made them hide in the blanket to avoid paying for their admission. In my personal opinion, this story sounds suspiciously made up. George's phone records showed that he had made over 40 phone calls beginning at 4:30 a.m. on July 6th. There were 2 time blocks in which he made no calls. The first was between 7 and 9 a.m. when he was bringing Tracy to work. The second was between 5 and 6:30 p.m. when his phone pinged off of cell towers on the far south side of Chicago near the Little Calumet River. To this day, George denies any involvement in the girls' disappearance. Intriguingly, the timeline of events that Tracy reported to the police actually changed in 2023. Tracy had told the authorities that she had left the girls home alone on the morning of July 6th, but phone records showed that she had actually spent the night of July 5th at her boyfriend's house, meaning that she had left Diamond and Tianda alone for much longer than she had initially reported. It's unclear why she lied about this detail. In 2023, Diamond and Tionda's aunt, Sheila Bradley Smith, woke up to 14 missed calls from her son before 6 a.m. There were also several missed calls from an unknown number. When she called her son back, he told her that a woman had contacted him on Instagram claiming that she was the now 25-year-old Diamond Bradley. Sheila's son got his mother in contact with the woman, and Sheila apparently told the woman that multiple people had claimed to be Diamond or Tionda before, and she didn't want to deal with yet another hoax. However, the woman responded politely, and Sheila eventually urged her to go to the police station. The woman spent 2 hours at the police station, then went to the FBI in order to get a DNA test. The results of this test are still unknown as of the time I'm writing this video. If there's ever an update, make sure you let me know so that I can put something here on YouTube. As of right now, however, the investigation is still ongoing. June 6, 1975, Tsim Sha Tsui, Hong Kong. A woman who was hired to make renovations at the Windsor building discovered a naked body in the attic. The corpse was a female who was estimated to be around 20 years old. Her ankles were tied together with blue cloth, and another blue cloth was stuffed in her mouth. Her hands were tied behind her back with a towel. There were several wounds on her abdomen and breasts, all of which had been inflicted by a sharp object. As if this case wasn't horrifying enough already, there was also a wooden stick that had been inserted in her genital area. Near the body, police found a torn white bra, a pair of black trousers, and a pair of torn blue women's trousers. The blue cloth in her mouth and around her ankles had most likely come from the blue trousers. In a pile of gravel near the building, the authorities found a brown handbag with a Zenith Clothing Factory card inside, a jade pendant, 2 bank passports with 20,000 Hong Kong dollars, a singular penny, an umbrella, and a rice kettle. The medical examiner determined that most of the wounds and mutilation had been inflicted post-mortem. The wooden stick was an exception. The cause of death was a single stab wound to the left side of the woman's chest. Several blood and urine stains were found on the wooden floor around the body, and the woman's hand was clenched in a fist, suggesting she had gone into shock before her death. The authorities believed the murder had a personal motive, although they didn't know what that motive could be. After all, they didn't even know who the woman was yet. Well, that part of the mystery would soon unravel. During the investigation, a man named Wong Quen-se reported his wife missing. 25-year-old Tam Yuen-Han had worked as a laborer in a garment factory. While on duty one day, an electrical fire had broken out at the factory and everyone had evacuated. When the fire was extinguished, a head count revealed that Tam had disappeared. The workers thought she must have simply gone home early and they returned to work. However, when Wong woke up the next day without his wife, he called the factory and discovered that she wasn't at work either. She had vanished without a trace. Wong identified the body as his wife. He told the police that Tam had 2 ex-boyfriends. According to Wong, he had received several threatening phone calls prior to marrying Tam. In these calls, the unknown man warned him not to, quote, take my love away from me. Despite the threats, they got married anyway. The threats continued after the marriage, and the police suspected the caller of being responsible for Tam's murder. The authorities questioned Tam's family and friends about her ex-partners, and they discovered that one of them had actually believed they would get married until Tam moved away from him and ended the relationship. The police soon discovered that Tam had received numerous other phone calls from her exes in which they begged her to come back and resume their relationships. They ended up tracking down each of Tam's exes, and they agreed that one in particular was extremely suspicious. They questioned Tong Lam about his relationship with Tam, and he lied to them, claiming that he had lost interest in Tam once she had gotten married. He also claimed that he had been in Macau on business at the time of the murder. This alibi checked out and left the police clueless. They issued a reward of 10,000 Hong Kong dollars for any information regarding Tam's murder, but nothing came of this. Tam Yuen-Han's case eventually went cold with no new leads or suspects. However, years after the initial discovery of the body, the police would begin to speculate about another case that they believed might be connected to Tam's. On September 2nd of 1975, a Japanese national who was living in Hong Kong returned home to find that his wife wasn't waiting for him like she normally did. He could hear the sound of their baby daughter crying from inside the apartment, and he rushed in to find a scene of abject horror. He entered his daughter's bedroom and found the body of his wife, 27-year-old Kiko Inari, lying on her back with a blood trail leading up to the corpse. Kiko's hands and feet were spread in a zigzag pattern, and she was only wearing a shirt. The police arrived soon after and conducted an investigation. The cause of death was strangulation, seeing as a green scarf was still wrapped around Kiko's neck. There were 21 wounds on her left breast and 18 on the right. The deepest of these wounds was 4 inches deep. Both of her nipples had been cut in the shape of a cross. The wounds on the lower half of her body were most heavily focused on her genital area. Just like in Tam's case, these wounds had all been inflicted post-mortem. During the investigation, the police found 2 coins on the carpet and 2 pillows from the master bedroom on the floor in the hallway. Several books had also fallen off of the bookshelves. All of these details suggest that there was a struggle. 3 watches that were worth a total of 3,000 Hong Kong dollars were missing from the apartment, indicating that the killer had attempted to stage a robbery. No weapons were found at the scene, but a pathologist determined that the object used to inflict the wounds post-mortem had been a surgical scalpel. The police reasoned that the killer had most likely smuggled the weapon out of the house inside of a newspaper. Due to the brutality of the murder, the authorities believed the killer had known Kiko personally. This drastically narrowed down the list of suspects, seeing as the couple were originally from Japan. Furthermore, Kiko did not speak any Cantonese or English, meaning that anybody who knew her would have had to speak Japanese. The area in which they lived was known for having a large population of Japanese expatriates, however. The killer had to be one of those people. The police questioned the neighbors, and a maid who worked in the building reported having heard a loud argument between a man and a woman at 2 p.m. She could not understand what the argument was about because she did not speak the language, but she suspected that it was Japanese. The man with whom Kiko was arguing has not been publicly named, so to avoid confusion, I'm going to refer to him as Hiroto. Hiroto was originally from Tokyo, and he worked in a local department store. Hiroto and his wife lived in the same apartment block as Kiko and her husband. Disturbingly, Hiroto was a known sex fiend who owned vast amounts of hardcore pornography and erotic magazines, and he was a frequent client of Hong Kong's prostitutes. 10 days before Kiko's murder, Hiroto's wife returned to Tokyo, leaving him alone. The police considered him a suspect because he had been alone at the time of the murder. They acquired a warrant to search Hiroto's apartment, but all they found was his pornography collection. Nothing connected him to Kiko's murder, and despite being coerced to give a confession, Hiroto denied any involvement. He was eventually released due to a lack of evidence. Both of these cases are still unsolved to this day. The police have considered the possibility that the killer could have actually been a woman. At both crime scenes, they searched for traces of semen but found nothing. This detail seems contradictory to the nature of the murders, both of which involve genital mutilation. However, nobody can be sure of this theory. That is, nobody except for the killer themselves. Diana Ferris was a 34-year-old mother of 3 in April of 1996 when she was murdered. At the time, she had been living in an apartment in Hartford, Connecticut with her new boyfriend. This boyfriend had recently gotten out of prison after a very short sentence, and he is not believed to be responsible for Diana's murder. Diana's daughter, Miranda, told the police that she called her mother almost every single day to check in, and she knew that something wasn't right when her mother wasn't picking up or returning her calls. Miranda became concerned that her mother had relapsed. Diana had recently gone through substance abuse treatment, and Miranda thought she may have started using again. However, she learned that her mother had been murdered in her own apartment. Diana's body had been found in her bed with a spiral telephone cord wrapped around her neck. Sadly, Diana had been pregnant at the time, and the unborn baby perished with its mother. During the investigation, a witness reported that 2 men had told him they were responsible for killing Diana Ferris. According to this witness, the motive had something to do with her former drug addiction. The police confirmed that everything in the man's statement seemed accurate, but they simply did not have enough evidence to make an arrest. The apartment showed no signs of forced entry, which most likely means Diana heard a knock at the front door and opened it, allowing her killers to force their way inside. According to the detectives, the murder most likely happened very quickly. However, there had almost certainly been a struggle. The phone that was used to strangle Diana had been ripped from the wall. Despite this, none of Diana's neighbors came forward to report a commotion or any suspicious people. Diana had given custody of her children to family members after realizing that her addiction made it unsafe for them to stay with her. She eventually got treatment for herself, and she was clean at the time of her murder. The neighborhood in which she lived was a dangerous one, and Diana refused to let her children visit her there. Her top priority was always to keep her children safe. She apparently dreamed of getting sober and reclaiming custody of her kids, but she was killed shortly before she could make it happen. Diana's case is still officially open to this day. It's a cruel world we live in, where someone can do the hard work to break an addiction, only to have their life snuffed out before they can reclaim their own children. I hope new information can come to light soon so that justice can be served.